Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Barriers and Boundaries Resilience Leadership Podcast. And I have a wonderful guest for you today, Esteban Polidura. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for your invitation.
The reason that I wanted to connect with Mr. Polidura here is I really sense the importance of having good connections, the ability to build resilience. It's tougher if you do it alone. And inviting a credible, wonderful guest, a resource that has an ability to help us see things from a better perspective. I just thought there'd be a lot of wisdom gained from that. So,
Of course, thank you very much. I was thinking about resilience, and it is one of those words and those terms that we hear so often now that it has become like a normal, a standard thing that people expect from us. And resilience, as you said, is nothing easy, definitely nothing that we should be trying to find and to develop alone. And that's basically how my journey starts. So I'm a banker and I have been a banker all my life, 26 years working in the financial industry. But of course, over that period, I had and continue to have contact with people, and I see people needing support on other fronts and not only on the financial front. And of course, that has meant me developing a parallel career as a life coach and especially focused on expats. And resilience is one of those issues that comes recurrently. People thinking they should be resilient, reading that they should be resilient, but in the end, feeling bad because they don't feel resilient and they don't know how to develop that resilience or who to talk to maybe have the support to do that. And again, as a life coach, I support people building resilience, managing the emotions that life changes bring, and in the end, trying to get them to reach their goals.
and you mentioned expat. How did that come about for you?
Yes, well, actually, I've moved a few times throughout my life. So I lived in the UK. Now I live in Switzerland. Have been living here for a few years. And Switzerland, it's interesting. It's a small country, but about a quarter of the entire population is an expat in some way or another. So of course, in Switzerland, I have contact with people from all over the world, people that are like you and I trying to make a living, develop as human beings, have a profession, and as expats. They have specific struggles. They have to deal with fear, with sadness, with loneliness. They have also to comply with some expectations about career, family, adapt to the culture, and therefore living in Switzerland, it was only natural for me to adapt my coaching to expats.
And I picked up some connections there between the emotions that someone's going through when they're facing adversity and also the expectations that you touched on. How much of that plays a role into the conversations that you have? And how
Is
does that conversation develop for you when you sit down with someone?
completely central, Eric, because a person when they realize they need support, it's not always very clear to them that before thinking about moving on, think about someone going through a grieving process or someone who unfortunately lost their job. They immediately think about finding a new job or leaving the grieving aside. And your question is really relevant because before thinking about goals such as those that I mentioned, we have to spend some time really looking at the emotions. And of course, therapists, psychologists, they look at the emotions deep and for a long time. But as a life coach, I have to acknowledge those emotions and really allow people to spend the time they need pinpointing how they feel and putting a name on those feelings. And it's interesting, but without doing that, really the second part of the process, which is achieving goals, doesn't really go as expected. If we spend time acknowledging the emotions, as I said, putting names, specific names on how people feel, and really spending the time that's needed on that, then the rest of the process flows only naturally.
What types of challenges do you face when just trying to connect with a client or someone that you're talking to? What does that process look like just to
Yeah.
start the connection?
First, the first issue is that life coaching and a life coach is often, or the role is often misunderstood with that of, for example, a mentor, or as I said, a therapist, or even a consultant. And that's the first challenge, is to really explain to people what a life coach is. A life coach is not there to tell you what to do. It's not there to go, as I said, deep into the emotions and find the roots of the emotions. But the life coach is there to be your partner in a journey where you expect to reach certain milestones and certain goals, but you need, again, someone that helps you achieve that. And the beauty of life coaching is that it really empowers the client or the other person to achieve those goals. The coach takes out from the client the path forward, the strategies to follow, and that is done through the right questions. And I believe that's in the end something that I see people really valuing, that they came up with the answers themselves.
And that's a there's a lot of beauty in that strategic planning. And we see that in like an organizational setting, a corporate setting, probably not so much in a personal life setting of how someone relates to their job or just how they want to focus on where they see themselves in their careers. I'm a big fan of defining your terms. So thank you for kind of laying out life coach. What is something that you would tell, let's say someone just graduated college, they got a good job, they're on the right track of doing things for their career. What would you tell that young, energetic person that feels like the world is their oyster and they're just ready to start out? How would a life coach benefit them when maybe they haven't faced a lot of adversity or maybe they're not really responding to something emotionally charged yet?
Of course. Yes, of course, of course. It's something they will experience. So first of all, and that's not only for them, but for anybody, I would suggest to really remain as authentic as you are. Remain yourself, because life will try to push you through, and life and people, of course, push you through some paths that might not be yours, or to become a person that you are not. And it's easy suddenly to really follow those kind of paths and listen to that kind of people to have a smoother process. In the end, it will have a cost. So try to remain as authentic as you are and pursue the kind of goals that you want to pursue. And then I would say, try to have someone that puts some structure into the process that you follow to achieve those goals. So, for example, a coach will start by defining the goal, but not only the long term goal, let's say become the CEO of a big company, but also the intermediate goals, because those intermediate goals are really the powerful ones. It is a little bit for those in your audience that have practiced, for example, karate. The belts and the colors have a purpose, to see and to feel that you are having progress and that you're getting closer to your goal. So the coach will set those intermediate and help you set those intermediate and long-term goals. Then both of you will look at your reality, where you stand, what resources you have available, who can support you. Then, of course, come up with a list of options to achieve those goals. And by options, I mean a long list, not two or three, but maybe 10. And finally, to choose from those, maybe one or two, rank them, know the one that you see easier to really execute, and then maybe one or two more, and put a time, put a place, have some accountability. And if you do that kind of process, which might sound simple, every week, and then you make that part of the way that you behave, part of the way you are, then you found probably the secret sauce.
Yeah, I love that. The authenticity aspect to it. And you talked about structure, which, here at Barriers and Boundaries, we talk about healthy boundaries and not allowing like bad habits to be barriers. Are there any trends or any commonalities as far as like barriers that people are having a hard time getting over in terms of how they approach their work or their career? Any
Yes,
insight?
of course, definitely. So the first barrier that people I think need to set and to be very clear is really on their time, because time is one of those things that we give easily to others. And in terms of work and a company, that's often the case. We spend more time in the office. We answer emails late at night. We look at some projects during the weekend. Of course,
Guilty, guilty,
sometimes,
guilty.
sometimes we have to do that. But if we do that in a systematic way, then we end up setting aside things that have a lot of value to us, like our family, our personal time, time to do sports, read, watch TV, simply have time for our personal priorities. So set a boundary in terms of time. Set a boundary also in terms of the information that you put into your system. I always make this or present this with the example of food. When we consume food, we are bringing an element into our bodies, no, and we are responsible of consuming the kind of food that does well to us. In case of office and boundaries, we also need to be conscious that the kind of conversations that we have with people, think here of gossiping, might do harm, and more harm than we realize. So be careful
Mm.
about the time you spend, the people you spend time with, the kind of conversations that you have, because that goes into your mind and that can very easily pollute the way you think and the way you feel. Finally, the last boundary that I would mention has to do with, again, with the way you perceive yourself in the future. You will be pushed to become someone that someone else, let's imagine your boss or your company, needs, someone that's useful for their purposes. But always remember who you want to become. And if there is a need to put boundaries there, and my goal is to pursue this and that, to become this kind of person, and I'm not liking that, put that boundary. Because again, in the end, if we don't do that, then you'll realize 20 years later that you didn't spend your time wisely.
That's beautiful. And the ability to identify what some of those boundaries may be, I I feel like that's a role for yourself as the life coach. Is maybe they don't have the experience to, I don't know what priorities are I should have for myself, or I don't know what habits that I should start instilling and what behaviors that I want to start adopting. I get the sense that you are like reinforcement to a lot of the priorities that are laid out.
Of course, the word resilience comes to mind, because when I speak to my clients or to the people that I coach, and I hear about their dreams, their objectives, their goals, but then I see when speaking to them that because of one reason or another, they are not willing, or they can't, or think they can't set boundaries, then I can immediately make them see that without boundaries, there will be no time and no space to move forward with the other things they want to achieve. So someone might say, facing tough times, I would like to develop more resiliency, but then I'm not willing to say no to my boss. I'm not willing to pay attention to my family. I'm not willing to really educate myself on the topics that matter to me, and the topics that I would one day like to use for a new profession. So those boundaries are key for achieving any type of goal that we have in mind.
If someone was to work with you, how are they developing the narrative that they tell themselves about who they are and what they should be focusing on?
Sure. And that comes, of course, hand in hand with limiting beliefs. And that's, again, a very beautiful side of life coaching, because you can see as a life coach that with the right kind of questions, and it might take one or two, it doesn't take 10 sessions for the other person to realize it, that with the right kind of questions, you can debunk all those kind of limiting beliefs. So I often have people that say, no, but I cannot do that. No, I cannot do that. I cannot put that limit. I cannot pursue that strategy to achieve my goal. And whenever I hear that I cannot do that, the immediate question that comes to mind is, can you think of a time when you were facing something similar, and you did achieve what you set yourself as a goal? Or can you remember one time when you thought you could do something and you did it? And then you hear all kinds of stories, no, from the simple stories, as as a kid I thought I would never be able to swim alone, and then it just took a couple of strokes and I did it. But again, doing that link between already a situation that person lived and that was able to overcome the current situation, again, very powerful, because they immediately realize it's just a mental limitation that they are facing.
Yeah, limiting beliefs can be pretty damaging for sure. Just getting past that. And when you are engaging with someone, having these conversations, do they see the insight? How does your role develop with someone over time?
Of course, of course. And again, this is something very interesting about coaching, which is not allowing the other person to feel dependent on you. Because once that person feels dependent on you for achieving their goals, let's imagine they achieved the goal they had in mind when they approached me, but then they feel they need to keep me close to them to achieve other goals, then I didn't do my job well. As a coach, I need to show them that they already know anything and everything they need to overcome their challenges. And that's why, with open ended questions, people come up with their answers themselves. So, of course, life coaches, including myself, we offer packages, no, 4 sessions, 6 sessions. But in reality, I've had many times when between the desired time that the client had in mind for coaching, they managed to achieve their goal. And they managed to, as I said, debunk all of those limiting beliefs, or most of them, and they feel stronger, they feel empowered, and then it's time to end the coaching relationship. And I think in the end, that's extremely rewarding to me, to see that someone can move forward without feeling that they need support.
I love that. Yeah, and you talked about authenticity at the beginning, and I was going to ask about the role of authenticity of you as a life coach. It feels like they go hand in hand.
Yeah, and usually coaches, we have that first call, which some of us call a discovery call. No, so that's usually a short call with a person that's expressing interest on having a coach, or having coaching sessions. And in that discovery call, what that discovery call is meant to be is really a space for both sides to be authentic. And then, if there is chemistry, if both sides feel they can and should work with the other person, then we move forward. But again, the risk of not being authentic is finding out in the middle of the process, or even worse, in the end, that the other person was not the right for you, the right coach, or even the right client. Because also, as a coach, for example, spending 5 or 6 sessions, maybe an hour and a half each one, and then realizing you could not support that person as you expected because you were not authentic enough at the beginning, it's very discouraging. So authenticity to me is a value that should be kept no matter what.
I wanted to ask about, as a life coach, you're helping people through all sorts of things. The balance between facing maybe an adversity that led them to find you versus dreaming big for their life.
Mhm.
How does that work for you, as far as they come to you with maybe something small, but then all of a sudden they're like, their mind is expanded to a bigger perspective? How does that work for you in some of those sessions
Yeah.
and calls?
And that's, I would say, let's call it the best case scenario. No, a person that comes to me and says, help me get a promotion. and then in the end they are thinking of becoming the CEO. No, that's the best case scenario, and that just tells you that throughout the process the person not only gained confidence and strength and resilience again, and courage to pursue their goals, but they achieved those smaller milestones, and they saw the possibility of dreaming big, and then they are now dreaming big. So it's often the case, and sometimes what happens is I support a person for their initial phase or their initial goal, then I don't hear about them, let's say for a year, and then they contact me again to support them on a different kind of goal. But I realized that they had so much progress in between that
Mm.
that of course the new situation demands a new kind of support. So that's a best case scenario, and this is often what I see. But it also demands effort from the person.
I've ran quite a few marathons, half marathons, and I can tell you that replenishment table, whether it's bananas or some sort of juice and water, those go a long way. That's what it sounds like to me when you said like, yeah, it might be a year later. You just might be that replenishment table for
Of
someone's.
course, it's a great example. No, I've never run marathons, and I admire you because that just tells me that you have such a strong discipline. You know, you don't run marathons by waking up early 3 days and testing your muscles. No, it's really a process, and definitely that's a great example because you work very hard, you do your best, but then you need that replenishing table to to cool down, to relax your mind, to really again put inside your thoughts different kind of ideas, to be challenged. That's also very important, and to feel fresh again, to pursue the next stretch, the next miles in your marathon.
Yeah, as you're saying this, I'm just equating this to conversations that you might be having with someone, and they could just be drained. They could
Totally.
be at that point where they just need some water, and having the words, the encouragement, the recommendations, and I love that you highlighted you are not making decisions for people. Can you tell me
Not
more
at all.
about what that kind of line in the sand is for you as far as like I'm not making the choice for you.
Yeah, yeah, no, as a coach, we need to be extremely conscious and aware not to give any type of advice. And it can be as light as during the conversation saying that you experienced something similar in the past and that you did that which helped you. No, it doesn't have to be like you have to do this to win the marathon. It can be those very light kind of comments that in the end are a suggestion, our advice. So as a coach, we need to be very careful not to do that, and to really focus on, as I said, open-ended questions. How do you plan to do that? Where are you going to do that? Who can help you? When? No, all these kind of buzzwords, which in the end help the person come up with their own answer. And one thing that it's part of the process, which is extremely powerful, a bit uncomfortable at the beginning, but then you get the feeling of how it works, is or are silences. When we are having discussions and conversations with people, asking those open-ended questions, and then you ask a really powerful one, and the person just stays there silent, we need to allow for those silences to happen, even if it takes 10, 15, 20 seconds, because those again will push that person beyond the boundaries to think in a different way. So silences are also part of the process.
How much of your interactions have you found you believe this person knows what they need to do? They already
Uh,
know, they just need to say it.
Always, my answer would be always. I would say without a doubt, we and people, we know what to do. But that answer is buried inside our minds and covered by the limiting beliefs that we discussed, by the ideas of others. by fear. Fear is, I would say, the number one emotion, causing us to think in ways we shouldn't, causing us to bury those answers deep inside our minds. And again, once the person realizes that they knew the answer, and that it was just a matter of time and the correct questions to come up with that answer, then the person knows that the sky is the limit. But again, coming up with that answer might take some time, and we need to allow for people to take their time. We need for them to really think, to come up with answers, and then within the conversation, they might have that answer readily available. And with this, I finished this answer, but it's very simple to see this in practice. I don't know, maybe you felt this too. You are very good, or many people, many of us are very good in giving advice, but coming up with our own answers for our own problems, that's very difficult. So we know we have the answers there, but we just need to learn how to come up with those answers for our own problems.
I love it. I love it. That is fantastic. Wow. What I want to do is I want to provide you an opportunity to kind of share how people can learn more about you. How can they get in touch with you? How can they reach out to you? What would you say to someone that's curious about talking to you as a life coach?
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Well, first, and the easiest way is to go into my website. So that's estebanpolidura.com. Very easy. And there you can find all the information. But then the other one, which is pretty convenient, is to look at my LinkedIn profile. And you have also the links to the website and some other resources. But what I like about LinkedIn and maybe other social media like Instagram is that you can get from me every day some kind of, I hope, useful information for people going through life transitions, life changes, expats, and always with a touch of inspiration and motivation. Because I think in the end, that's something we all need, regardless of what we're facing. We always welcome that kind of inspiring comment or inspiring post that makes us think in a different way.
I love it. I appreciate your time, and I'll include those notes there. And man, what a value added that you bring to the table. And I hope that anyone listening or watching can see that. And sometimes it's important just to get out of your own head and just allow that space to breathe and think through things and think things out. And you never know, you could go from just that adversity to actually seeing yourself as a CEO. So I really appreciate that. And well, thank you for your time. Hopefully we'll stay connected and maybe catch up one of these days again in the future.
Of course, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure, and I'm here for you anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, my friends, Mr. Esteban Polidura there for you, life coach. Please check out his website, his LinkedIn, his socials, connect with him. Maybe even consider one of those discovery calls to see if a life coach is good for you. But at Barriers and Boundaries, we're talking about healthy employees creating healthy organizations. And this is just one of those tools and resources that I encourage you to consider, as that will help you become more resilient. And when you are resilient, you're creating more, you're developing more, you're tapping into ideas that you maybe didn't know were there, and exploring the possibility of promoting and growing. But even if you just want more stability in where you're at, resilience is still the key. So keep plugging away, keep charging, keep fighting the good fight. And until next time, EB out here.